Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, with your host, Hurricane Age. New day, new show, awesome topic. I've had a lot of authors, but not like this one today that I have with me on the show. There's an honor and a privilege, and we're going to be talking about a career path, and specifically, we're going to discuss the last book and plenty of other things here on today's show. And you know, really, I'm looking at the credentials of my guest today, and pretty cool stuff to be a New York Times best-selling ghostwriter, author. Right? It's just something that is fun that I wanted to share, and we're going to talk, further and deep dive with that with our guest Tim. Welcome, Tim, to the show. How are you today?
I am good, man. Thanks. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm excited. We're here. We're gonna, have a good time. I mean, I was looking at your stuff and your work. Your last book is obviously something that you did on your own. This is yours, and I think you have a co-author, and we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
But your journey as just a journalist and writer and working for other folks and writing books. Let's talk about that, because I still want to, deliver that message to our people. What does that entail?
Well, it entails a lot of not wanting to work for other people. Really, I mean, I went freelance in 1995. So it's been 28 years since I drew a salary from somebody else. And at the time I was working for an ad agency in Southern California, where I'm originally from. I live in Kansas City now, and I just said I don't want to do this anymore. I poached some clients who liked me and hated my agency. I quit my job. I moved down to Laguna Beach, California, with my best friend Anton. We rented the lower half of a duplex beneath an Irish couple who were drunk pretty much 24/7. We grew our own weed, and I started writing for myself. And it was pretty good times. It was pretty awesome. And I had no girlfriend. I was just single, me and my best friend, and just hanging out at the beach and working for myself. It was a good period in my life. And 28 years later, I'm still doing that. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. I would never go back to working for somebody else under any circumstances. It's been awesome.
Oh, well, so you give me a lot of stuff there. And I want to start, first of all. I have been to Laguna Beach. I love Laguna Beach. It's one of the, probably cleanest cities that I've been to, and nicest, quietest.
We're actually headed there. My wife and my now 2 daughters are actually headed there next week for our 21st wedding anniversary, because we met there. My wife and I
nice.
met there, so we go back there every summer.
Like, you make me feel like I want to just put a picture and video of Laguna right now.
It's a great town, man. It's an awesome
town. You know what, when I was there, I was at the beach, and they had those signs, no drones.
Yeah.
And that was like first time I seen actually something like that, and on all the beaches. And I'm gonna give you a true joke. This is something funny. So I was with my partner, and we were there for a meeting, and he happens to smoke cigars. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't know that in Laguna Beach there is no smoking anywhere in public. So here's just and the odd thing, he was looking at the sign with the drone, but there's also a sign not smoking. And he didn't pay attention. So this lady came in and started screaming at us, like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, not sure what are you talking about, man? So she points out the sign, so I started laughing. And another guy said, "Dude, there is no smoking in Laguna Beach, period. I mean, you can smoke pot, but you can't smoke cigarettes."
Right.
Like, okay. Yeah, so that was our highlight, but it was fun. I mean, we had a great time there because we were.
I'm sorry you had that. I'm sorry you had that. It's a great time. I lived there for almost 10 years and met my wife there, like I said, and we go back every year for the pageant masters, and it's just great.
it was great. I mean, they had the murals at the beach. It's beautiful
Yeah,
stuff. I mean,
one of our
it's
favorite places.
gorgeous,
Yeah, it's
beautiful. Anyway, so that was that. But I want to go back to the story behind you leaving your agency
Mhm.
and working for yourself, freelancing, and that's an important piece of. I guess we can talk about it for a few minutes because a lot of people are stuck
Yeah,
doing something they do not like. And I think when we talked about the book, there's probably somewhere there we can have that continuation of that
oh yeah,
discussion. But
absolutely.
but really, the concept of you not doing it, at the agency, not feeling it, and deciding like, this is not working out. I want to do my own. And again, 28 years later, you are freelancing, doing your own thing. And you said it best. You will not go back no matter what, because you've enjoyed it. It gave you everything, the freedom, the I guess the peace of mind, no stress. I mean, there's a stress at any level, but different. You don't have to, I guess, entertain the ideologies of other people when you can have yours and work really independently and have a good time with it. And that's actually a higher being, if you want to call it that way, because you can enjoy life differently. And a lot of people are caught in that. I mean, we're talking about psyche stuff. We talk about psychology in general. People are stress, anxiety, all these things, depression. A lot of it to do with the choices we make sometimes and work. And I know this is something that we're going to talk about within the book, and so that's a big piece of a discussion in terms of a lot of people out there today. They want to quit, they want to start their own, and it's hard, not easy. How was that for you? I mean, I heard what you said. You got a couple of clients, and then you worked from there, and you moved, to better places, and just grew into who you are today as a writer. But that decision had to come in as an important piece of your life. You didn't look back, and you moved on, and that's it. Period and out. A lot of people can say, well, you might be not in the right mind, at least at the time. If they see the success today, they'll be like, oh, this stuff works. But in this case, at the time, was there anyone that questioned that decision for you?
No, not there wasn't any. No, it was absolutely nobody who thought it was a bad idea. Um, Least of all me. I mean, I had thought about doing it for a good year, and one of everything kind of aligned to make it possible. I had money saved, I had a roommate ready, I had clients who were willing to come with me, so I had an income right from the jump. But one of the things I learned from not only my experience but the experience of other freelancers, other people who left jobs to go freelance, is there's no perfect time to do it. Everybody, you see people tied up in knots going, well, I'm going to wait till I have this much money saved, or I'm going to wait till after fourth quarter comes, and there's never going to be a comfortable time, a right time, quote unquote, to make that kind of a jump. Because even now, I mean, this was 1995, right? There was the internet was AOL and CompuServe, right? There was no
No.
there was no gig economy. Now it's a little different. People are much more familiar with the idea of contract work, of side hustles, of gig economy. It's a much more familiar thing now. Back then, it didn't exist. It was just like you hustle and you make it happen, or you go. There was no Uber. You couldn't do Uber and DoorDash to make rent. So it was a matter of saying, okay, I'm gonna take the jump, take the leap, and do it. It really wasn't that hard for me because I had planned it all out in advance. So I really never had any doubts about it. And I wasn't writing books then. I was doing what I had done at my agency. I was doing marketing. I was writing ads, billboards, and radio spots and brochures and that kind of stuff. And but I think it's really, you have to commit to it. I think it's almost too easy now with technology, with gig economy, with side hustles that are everywhere, to sort of dip your toe in it and say, well, if this doesn't work, I'll go back to the job. And if it's going to work, you have to give it everything. You have to, the old thing about Cortez burning his ships, right? He burned his ships so his crew was motivated because they couldn't go back to Spain. They had to make it work in the Americas. And it's the same kind of thing. You have to be willing to burn the ships and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build this. I'm going to get through the low times, the times when it looks like I can't afford anything other than macaroni and cheese, and keep going. I never really had that time. I mean, for one reason or another, I made more the first year I was freelancing than I did my best year at my previous job. And I've gone way, way beyond that now, writing books. So it was unquestionably the right one of the three best moves I ever made in my life.
Well, thank you, Tim, for sharing that. And you're right. I mean, in the 90s, you're like the originals. I mean, that's to your point. That was like where it wasn't it was just an idea. Very few freelancers, and in marketing, there was some trends in there, but it was not to your point where
Yeah.
it is today.
Yeah,
Uh,
there always were back then. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call us the OGs, but it was a lot harder back then. I didn't have a website or anything like that. It was very old school relative to today.
Again, if you do it the hard way, everything else becomes easy eventually. So a lot simpler now with tech, right?
Yeah.
So now that was ads and everything, which is pretty common, and then you went into writing. So
Yeah.
what prompted you into that? I mean, was that a passion of yours?
You mean writing books?
Writing books.
Yeah. Well, I've always been writing. So I wrote everything. I was a journalist and wrote it. But books came about by accident, as a lot of things do. So in 1999, I got a call from a client of mine I did a bunch of marketing work for, and he said, "Hey Tim, could you write me a book?" He had a branding agency at the time. He wanted me to write a book about his philosophy of personal branding, and I said, "Absolutely, Peter, I can write your book." And I hung up the phone and went, "Oh crap, how do I write a book?" Because that's what you do, right? Opportunity comes along, you say absolutely yes, and you hang up the phone, you have a panic attack, and then you figure it out, because that's how you move forward. You find a way. And so I wrote that first book. It was terrible. I think it was terrible. I probably don't have a copy of it, but it had my name on the cover. I had a with Tim Vandehey credit, and he sent it to me when I was traveling in Rome, and all the Italian girls thought it was really cool that I had a book with my name on the cover. So that was, there's some benefit to that.
There was a bonus, right?
Yeah, but that's, I did 3 books for that guy, for Peter Montoya, and the third one did really, really well. It was a bestseller in Japan or Korea, I forget. It's been a while. And that third book got a lot of attention because it did very well. It got great reviews and so on. And that got me an agent, and it got me a couple of bigger projects, and things kind of snowballed. And by 2005, I think I was able to say, yeah, I'm going to dump the marketing thing. I don't need to do that anymore. I'm just going to ghostwrite books for people. Because at that point, I was getting offered 2-3 projects at a time. And I'll even now today, I'll write 4 or 5 books in a year, honestly. So at various stages. So yeah, I've never not been busy ever since then. I've written more than 65 books now, up to date. So.
Wow. I mean, listen, it's a long run, but quite an achievement. I mean, that's a lot of books. I mean, it's pretty intense. And I love the story that, the first book is always going to be the first book. I mean, it might not be the best, but it is the best at the time when you wrote it, I mean, ultimately. And then we learn from that, like everything else. But I love what you said. I got a client, they want it, I can do this. I'll figure this out. That's your mind, and then you make it work, and that's really something also to teach audiences all over the world, is that sometimes you gotta leap. You gotta do it. And you have a way. You gotta find a way. You're gonna do this, but people hesitate. Oh, you know what? I don't think I can do this, and then they lose the opportunity, and that's the opportunity that may have opened a huge door. In your case, that was it. I mean, that was the new world for you.
Yep.
But many people sometimes don't see that window of opportunity, or they just think that's going to be too much wind from there, and they're just lying down and it's over, and then they just collapse on themselves. And so it's an important, folks, if you're watching and listening, this is real life scenario of someone who's got a humongous success doing what he's doing. But had he not taken that particular point of life, event and opportunity, things could have been different. We don't know, but he didn't. He actually made it happen, and that's what matters. So that means we can all do that. And again, that's just something that I wanted to throw in there for people, because it's important to send these messages every now and then to reinforce that.
I think that's absolutely valid. I mean, one of the things that I've worked with a lot of creative professionals over the years, other writers, artists, musicians, photographers, all different kinds of composers. And one of the common things I've seen with a lot of those people is they might be super talented creatively, but they are not aggressive about the business side of their careers. They don't go after opportunities. They don't aggressively self-promote. I think maybe they think it's unseemly or it shouldn't be necessary, or, oh, real artists don't promote themselves. Well, I'm sorry, but the greats wrote for a penny a word. Dickens wrote for magazines. O. Henry wrote for a penny a word. That's always been the case, that great artists had to promote themselves in order to be able to make a living doing what they do. And I just kind of got a natural knack for it, I guess, and probably my marketing background. But that's one of the I'm starting to build a coaching practice for ghostwriters now. That's something I'm going to probably launch in 2024, coaching other ghostwriters on the career side of things. And that's one of the things I tell them is you have to be your own best advocate. And that's true of any profession, really, especially if you're an independent contractor in anything. Sales, doesn't matter. You have your own dental practice, doesn't matter. If you're on your own, you have to be your own best advocate. You have to be aggressive, get out there and create opportunities. And that takes, honestly, a lot of belief in yourself, but also a lot of willingness to say, like when that client asked me to write the book, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I just said, you know what, if I screw it up, I'll apologize and fix it. That was my thought process. My entire thought process, I'll figure it out. If I screw it up, I'll apologize and then I'll fix it. Nothing more complicated than that. It was, oh my God, do I have the ability? I didn't let that self-doubt creep in or anything like that. I just thought, you know what, I don't have to be perfect. And it wasn't, but it got done. And if I hadn't done that, as you said, I probably wouldn't be where I am now.
Again, I mean, you have to get into the trenches somehow, and you have to believe in yourself. And I love what you said. If it didn't work out, you can always rewrite it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, you get the feedback, you work it, you have time, you can make it happen. That's not an issue. And by the way, I love what you said about that you're going to the coaching business to teach others, how to get into that stuff. And it's funny you said that about being your own advocate. This is a true story that happened to me. I'm always self-promoting, my brand, if you want to call it that way. And you're supposed to have a brand in general. I was on LinkedIn, and this guy just brought me on a post, overreach. Yeah, and I'm like, so I kind of neglected that comment. I didn't pay no mind. But I've always wanted to actually bring that on the topic because guess what? This was 3 years ago when I started. 3.5 years ago when I started. And guess what? Overreach does work. It's marketing 101. So as a message, you overreach, and if you don't like it, I mean, too bad. You can just, scroll down and up, as I always tell people. You don't have to take my content. But in order for me to get to people, you got to have to do this over and over. And yes, you're going to get rejections. You're going to get all those things. But you have to believe in yourself. And that's actually exactly what I'm getting from you, is that you believed nothing else mattered and you had to do it and you pushed it. And I love what you said about the business part of things, because you're right. There's the creativity part, and a lot of people are geniuses, and they do the best thing. But if they don't market themselves, no one knows what that happens. And they need to get into that side of the element of the business and promotion and things like that to get in front of people. And you're right. Yeah, it could be difficult. Not everybody has that drive, but with some help, it can happen as well. Or guidance. Coaching is a great thing. And I love what you're going to be doing, because I think that's going to elevate that. Now, I want to ask a question. I get it, but for our audiences, you keep stating the word ghostwriters. Now, just for our audiences, can we define that? Because some people's like, is this like a ghost story, or I'm just being funny about it?
No, sure. A ghostwriter is someone who writes any material, not necessarily just a book, but any material that someone else takes credit for. So there are ghostwriters in music. There are a lot of ghostwriters in the rap and hip hop world who write rap and hip hop lyrics. There are speech ghostwriters. That's not as commonly thought of as ghostwriting, because most people know, let's say, Joe Biden doesn't write his own speeches. In terms of what I do, it's ghostwriting books, and there's a lot of that. Go into the bookstore, you look for books by people who aren't famous as authors, politicians, movie stars, athletes, etc. I would bet that at least maybe 2/3 of those books were written by a ghostwriter. So that's someone who is probably not credited, might be credited. I've been credited sometimes. I get a with Tim Vandehey credit. But more often than not, the ghost is not credited. The big example is Spare, Prince Harry's book that came out earlier this year. Massive bestseller. So I always forget the name of the ghostwriter. Starts with an M. Moringer, I think, is his name. He's the one who wrote Andre Agassiz. Ghostwrote Andre Agassiz' memoir a few years back. Great book. So Prince Harry's book Spare was an example of a massive bestseller that was ghostwritten. So that's basically what it is. So sometimes you can call it co-write, co-authoring if I get my name on the book, which I sometimes do, sometimes don't. But basically, it's I come in, or any ghostwriter comes in, learns about the author, does tons of interviews, background research, etc., puts together the book and writes the book, and more often than not, does not get credit for the book. So it's something you have to that you can't love to do if the credit is the only thing, which obviously I've been doing it for a long time, so it doesn't really bother me. It's nice to get credit. There are books that I've done that I'm glad I didn't get credit on because they didn't turn out the way I wanted them to. So just as well.
So it has both benefits. Like it works both ways, right? But you're right. If it's like everything else, if the title or whatever your name is not as important in terms of being out there, and when you write the book, that may be not hurting. If it's important, that could be a challenge for someone that wants to actually have their own signature and book and name.
Well, what I tell people is there's nothing stopping you from doing both. I mean, when I wrote the book we're going to probably talk about later, Swipe, the one that I reached out to you about initially, that's got my name on it. But I've also written, a bunch of other books while that book was being written. That
no one knows about.
my name on them. Some do. There's a few that do. Lately, I've been in a stretch where I'm purely a ghostwriter. I'm invisible. But that's okay. That's that's it. It's kind of like when you hear you go to the Academy Awards and you hear people give their thank you speeches. When they win the statue, and they really talk about how important it is they're recognized by their peers. Mm-hmm. That's what most of us really care about. We know that authors and agents and editors and publishers know that we do great work in the ghostwriting community, and if the average person reading the book doesn't know that, that's all right. I mean, I've had my name on New York Times bestsellers before that I wrote. Didn't change my life one bit. So, it's people go, oh, cool, your name's on a New York Times bestseller. And that's pretty much the end of it. And then they go on to the next thing. It's not like that changed, that's changed my life in any way.
Oh, hold on, Tim. It is a big achievement. And, I mean,
it is.
It's something to recognize. That's why I start with that. I think it's something that you want to, literally just give as the due for it. I mean, you really give the credits for it.
No question.
It's your sweat and brain in action. It's being recognized. I mean, recognition is an important piece of life. Sometimes, I mean, you may not want a lot of it, but when you do a great work, you want at least to see a fruits of that work, and some level of respect that comes with the.
Like I said, in the industry, people know the work that I do. And I can talk about it in the industry. It doesn't necessarily appear on the cover, but I can tell agents and publishers and editors that I've done this book and this book and this book, and they know that I'm legit when I say that. And that doesn't matter what their name's in the book or not. They know that I've worked on that book because everybody knows everybody else in that community.
So Tim, I this is probably a question. I don't know if someone asked you this question, but it's becoming a more common topic of AI. Mm-hmm. And replacing different industries. How does that work in the case of ghostwriting? I mean, I can write a lot of things. I mean, you can just give it a topic and it can go crazy, right? It would. I personally don't think it will replace the human creativity and the personal touch in a way. That's just my personal thought. At least today. I mean, I haven't seen a super advanced version of it where it's like so creative is not funny, but they tend to be good at what they do in terms of writing. If you ask an article, I mean, you can get an article and it's pretty. Now for a writer, you might think, this is not as good. For someone who's not, I mean, they'll be content with that what level of work that's being given by let's say ChatGPT or otherwise. Mm-hmm. So in your world, does that feel wrong? Does that create some sort of a anguish that it's going to be pretty much the end for the writers? What does that look like in the world of writers?
It doesn't, because I use AI for research, and statistics all the time. I use it for gathering stats, and I use it for that quite frequently. Because that's what AI is great for, is automating repetitive tasks that take me hours otherwise, and I can just say find this, and it goes and finds it. Because a lot of my work is based on, I have to do a lot of research what I do typically, and but no, I got into a little kind of a staring match at a restaurant in LA a while back. I was out there working with one of my authors, and sat down with another author at a restaurant talking through a project, and two women sitting next to us were talking. They kind of overheard our conversation. The four of us got talking, and turned out the woman sitting directly to the right of me was in the AI world. And I told her I didn't think AI could replace what I did, and she was very put out by that. She didn't want to hear that. And I said, well, I'm a writer. She said, oh, AI can write. And I'm like, no, AI can't do what I do. And I could tell that she'd heard that before. But AI is great at approximating a very digestible creative style. AI doesn't do true style. AI doesn't do voice. It's generic. So if I want humor or sarcasm or pathos or colloquialism or anger or sex appeal or anything else like that in a piece I'm writing, whether it's a book or an article or anything else, AI is not going to be able to give me that. So AI does not have a personality. And
emotions.
Right. Well, yeah, it doesn't have emotions, but it doesn't have personality. AI doesn't have an attitude. And you can say, write this in the style of Eddie Murphy back in his Saturday Night Live days, and it might give you an Eddie Murphy attitude. But it's going to be an Eddie Murphy attitude, not the attitude of the person that you're writing the book for, in my case. So I think AI is like anything else. It's a useful tool. It's going to create a lot of challenges for people outside my field, especially in areas like video, deep fakes, and video and photography, things like that. It's more challenging for them because most people, I think most people, even lay people, can recognize the difference between something written by a human being and something written by a machine. Doesn't mean what's written by the machine is bad. It means it's like the difference between lab-grown meat and meat that comes from a cow.
Yeah, I've seen that recently.
they're both meat, and I've tasted the lab-grown meat, and I've of course tasted steak. There's a difference, and you can tell the difference. Neither one is bad. They're just different, and not everyone's going to have a taste for the sameness of the processed stuff. And that's also true, I think, for AI and ChatGPT or what have you. So there's a human factor there in terms of personality and voice and style that I don't think AI can duplicate. Will it someday? I don't know. It might put me out of a job, but by the time it gets sophisticated and put me out of a job, I'll probably be retired.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Tim. I love your view of it, because I tend to agree personally to it, because you're right. There is, your charisma, your person, your feelings, all that reflects in your writing. Even if you're doing it for a particular topic or based on somebody else's story, right? You're still going to put a lot of that personal touch, which, to your point, AI may not have that. It will give you generic stuff that it learns, from everything else. But again, it may not be, because this is going to be all new anyways. It's a new concept that you're putting together. It hasn't learned it yet, so it might not be. Maybe in the future it could duplicate it, but it would not be original, not be the authentic, version which you would have. So I agree with your concept, but I needed to ask that question because it's becoming a topic of the hour. Everything is like AI, and I use it too, and I love some of the functionality.
I hear it a lot, and I think a lot of the hype, a lot of the talk is hype. It's pure hype. It's people freaking out over something they don't understand. I've worked with people who are in the field. I've worked with people at MIT. I've written books for people at MIT, and they all say the same thing. It's going to be great. It's going to change a lot of industries. It's not going to be Skynet. It's not going to be the matrix. Don't worry about it. It's not. Now, is it going to change some jobs? It might take away some jobs. Maybe. I don't know how much of that's going to happen. I do think it's going to automate a lot of processes that, I mean, I would love to be able to say to an AI, find me the best, because I travel a lot. And I would love to be able to say to them, find me the best flight from Kansas City to San Francisco for leaving at this time, and have it book it and have the just boom, that does it for me. Find me a hotel room between this price and this price in this part of town. Bang, done. That kind of stuff. If AI could do that just with the voice command, I would marry it. And I'm already married. So
your wife won't be jealous. It will save her a headache.
Probably. I mean, she's she leaves that stuff to me, so I make trouble.
Okay.
But that AI I think is going to be useful for that. Is it going to change? It's going to change some jobs. I don't think it's going to put writers out of work. I think it will. I think it'll put bad writers out of work. How about that? It'll put hacks out of work because they're the ones who are cranking out the crap articles, the crap listicles that are barely in English that you see all over the internet. Those people will be out of work, and good riddance to them because they're bad writers. But really good writers, no. Really, strong writers in any field, speech writing, article writing, press releases, whatever, or marketing. Their ideas set them apart. It's the creativity of the ideas, not just the line-to-line writing. And that's one thing AI doesn't do. AI does not brainstorm and say, hey, what if we had an ad campaign built around 1984? Then we have Apple. AI doesn't do that. AI does not innovate and brainstorm. So
you got to give it commands, and it just responds to the command.
You teach it information, and it spits out. It accesses information and spits it out of the context that you give it.
Perfect. All right. Well, so enough on the AI side, but thank you. I mean, I think that's pretty, awesome response in terms of that. So at least if there are any authors out there, writers out there, rest assured, you still have your signature, your flavor is going to be there, and AI is not going to change that flavor for you. So now let's talk about Swipe, the book.
Yeah.
What prompted you to write the book, and then let's dig in a little deeper on it, because it's got a lot of good nuggets to potentially change lives.
Right. Okay. Thank you for asking. So Swipe, subtitle is the science behind why we don't finish what we start. I forget the subtitle of my own book. So Dr. Tracy Malett, who's the organizational psychologist who is my longtime client and good friend and co-author, he and I sat down at the beginning of what's now become the COVID era, 2020, and I'd already ghosted 2 books for him in the employee engagement space. That's what his company does. They help companies they help other companies get their employees more engaged in their jobs. And we were going to write a 3rd book about employee engagement from the employee side. Why do employers do all these things? Why don't employees choose to engage? And the more we looked at it, let me back up. So we started to look at a model, an informational model, and a metaphor based on the idea of swiping on a smartphone. And that the idea was changeability, distractibility. People want to run away from their current situation at work and they make rash decisions and they disengage reflexively. And the idea of swiping on the smartphone, and the idea of just a one-word title, Swipe, we liked all of that. So we said, oh, this is really cool. Let's write this. And a few months later, I was sitting in my backyard after all the lockdowns came along. Luckily, I had a beautiful backyard. So I was sitting back there with a cocktail and thinking about this book. And I called Tracy. I said, I don't think this is a business book. I think this is an everybody book. Because this is a book about not finishing what you start. This is not just a book about engagement and career. This is a book about people who have aspired to do everything from write their first book, to get in shape, to save money, to run their first marathon, etc., and haven't been able to do it, and can do it, tried over and over and over and over again, are never able to finish and have massive regret because of it. In the business world, it's also about people who disengage from their work, quit their jobs, and never fully realize that they're leaving opportunities on the table, because by the time they realize I probably should have stayed, they're already gone. And so we said, this is a bigger book than what we initially had in mind. And so that was the book that became Swipe. We started to look at the neurology, the psychology of why people repeatedly start to pursue a goal that they truly want to achieve, personal goal, artistic goal, financial goal, relationship goal. And as soon as they become uncomfortable with the pursuit of that goal, they do what we call swiping. So on the smartphone, it's the idea is that you can just tap or swipe a screen and you change your experienced reality in that digital realm. And so we have become, our research has shown we've become conditioned by technology to, we don't really believe that we can swipe the world. You know, we sometimes wish we could, but we still react to it as though the example that I give, and I know 100 people who've done this, and I always get people to smile when I say this because I do this all the time. So after years of typing, after years of using computers or tablets or whatever, what have you, when you're writing on let's say a yellow pad, you're making notes or you're writing something, and you make a mistake, how often for that one split second do you think, where's the undo key or the undo command before you go, writing with a pencil on a yellow pad, what am I doing? I've done that 100 times and laughed at myself every time I've done it. But that's the technological hangover. That's the hangover that makes us for just a split second think, oh, if I don't like the reality I'm in, technology will just let me change it. I can change it immediately. I can change it back. I can leave this uncomfortable thing I'm doing. So swiping, and we said, swiping has become both a noun and a verb. So to swipe is to reflexively, instinctively hit the eject button on an uncomfortable circumstance. We are trying to do something that we have never done before, or that we're trying to do that we've never been able to finish before, I should say. So that's, for some people, that might be 50 pages into writing their first novel for the 5th time. They hit the wall and they go, I don't know what to do. And they just say, forget it. I'll never be a writer. And they crumple the pages and throw in the trash or delete the file. For someone who's trying to get in shape, maybe they're doing, P90X or something like that. And they go for a month and they're busting their tail and they're working hard. But let's say they haven't changed their diet or whatever. They had bad expectations. They look in the mirror and go, after a month, they go, I'm not ripped. Why am I not ripped? This sucks. And they quit. That happens all the time. It's a universal phenomenon. People quit doing things that they really, really want to achieve, and they have regret for the rest of their lives because of it. So that's what we decided to write Swipe about, that universal phenomenon.
That's a lot.
That was a long explanation.
No, but that was great. And I would say Swipe is so smart. I mean, because it is, I mean, in a nutshell, you've covered the reality of life for pretty much all of us. Because I think at any given point, somewhere, someone watching right now, listening, has gone through an experience where they either started something and they just didn't have the courage, or they just kind of like gave up on it. And that could have been the moment of change. Like we started the discussion about what you did, and you just didn't look back and you moved on and you started your own career path and you did it. But many don't. Or they start and then they just, give up quickly and they move back, and or they just stay back again, and it becomes a problem. I think you mentioned something about the pandemic was the moment we were able to write this. But really, the pandemic also was a catalyst, to a lot of change for a lot of people. And I'm not talking in terms of the tragedy part, that's one thing, but even in terms of change of lifestyle. Many have actually woken up to the ideas like, wait a minute, I think we got to do something about this, and they moved and they started to be more creative and really living a better life to avoid the regrets. Because one of the things that comes back in discussions in a lot of shows is that many people over time eventually they get to a point where they regret the things they didn't do, or they started and never finished.
Right? We always have more regret over the things we didn't do than the things we did. Always.
Yes, but so now the idea is that, well, why can't you do your stuff? If you want something, you do it. Live your life to the fullest. I had a show a couple of years ago with a guy from Australia. He's known as the bucket list guy, and you hear the bucket list, you think about like the things we do when we're ready to depart this world. He actually reverses to the idea it doesn't have to be at the end of life where you start thinking. it's what you do today. You have your commands for the day, for the week, for the month. I want to do this and I want to do it. And this is a time frame. And you make a change in life where it's happening now, not later. Because later, you're not guaranteeing it, right? We live in the
No, you're not
moment.
guaranteed tomorrow. That's right.
Yeah. So I love, I mean, the book itself, I mean, I love what you said. This is not for just an education purpose. This is for everybody to absorb the
Right.
information and apply.
Right. Well, and I think that the idea of not waiting is not waiting, because then you're not guaranteed 5 minutes from now. I could drop dead on your show. I hope I don't. My wife,
Hopefully not.
it'll be a bummer for my wife to have to clean up her office, but yeah. So do it now. There's a certain certain truth to that. But I think what we found, what Tracy and I found in looking at so much of this, was really there were two big factors playing out when people do what we call swiping, or just when they swipe, right? And really, this is an issue of people who have tried to do things that they desperately want to accomplish over and over and over again. They keep failing. One is neurological, and one is psychological. So the neurological part of it is, and this is work from Daniel Kahneman, who's the Nobel Prize-winning economist from Princeton. He described the psyche as having, the brain is really having what's called system 1 and system 2. So system 1 is the instinctive, reactive part of the brain. It's the learned muscle memory part that allows you to drive home from work for the 934th time and not have to worry about where to turn. And you just get there. You're like, oh, I'm home, and you're having a phone call on the way, and you're ordering food, and you're not thinking about it. It's the part of your brain that puts you on autopilot. It's instinctive. There's no thought involved. System 2 is the thinking part. System 2 is the analytical part. It takes more time and energy. It's when you're driving home from work for the 934th time, and there are a bunch of road closures. And suddenly you have to navigate through your city or your town or your suburb based on your knowledge of that area. Suddenly you have to start going, okay, where do I turn here, make a left at the gas station? You have to navigate yourself home. That's system 2 at work. So when people swipe, it's not a thought process. They're not saying, oh, I've been working out for 6 weeks now, and I don't have the results that I want. I think I'll quit and sabotage myself. No, it's an emotional process. It's an emotional reaction. I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't get what I wanted. I'm embarrassed. I feel humiliated. I feel ashamed. I feel hopeless, worthless, whatever. A lot of negative emotions come into play, and we just react. That's system 1 at work. And part of what we wanted to do with this book is help people put system 2 in charge of that process, which is think about what you're doing. Think about why you're doing it. The psychological part of the swipe is all about expectation management. Most of the time, what we found was with people who, and it wasn't always when they were doing something for the first time. They might have done the same thing. It's amazing how we can deceive ourselves. We're very good at self-deception. I've talked to people who've tried to write the same book 10 times for 30 years and keep going through the same process, like somehow something's going to change. And they keep running into the same roadblocks at page 50 or 60. So people have faulty expectations about what the process is going to be like, the process of doing whatever it is they're going to attempt to do. And they have false expectations of the results they're going to get. So this, the fitness metaphor works perfectly here, right? They go in this fitness program thinking, I'm going to get all these great results in 6 weeks. Well, no, you're going to get some results. You're going to probably lose some weight to look better. You're not going to look like The Rock, not in 6 weeks, and probably not in 3 years, unless your diet's perfect, that kind of thing. But they have expectations of, this is what's going to happen, and this is what it's going to be like. Well, I've done some of those workout programs. What it's like is you're on a puddle on the floor wishing you could die after a lot of the workouts. And unless you change your diet, it takes a long time you're probably not going to get super shredded, right? You'll get some results, but if what the really good results are going to take 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. So if your expectations are out of line with the reality of what it is you're trying to do, whatever that something is, you're probably going to get frustrated at some point and give up and hit that eject button, or what we call swipe. So those two mechanisms, the system one, system two thing, and expectation management, are where a lot of people we have found go wrong, not because there's something wrong with them, it's because they happen to be human beings. And they're reacting, and they're reacting emotionally, and they're reacting based on expectations that are bad. Nice thing is those things can be fixed.
Oh, Tim, that's heavy stuff, and I love. I mean, I know your Tracy is psychology, expertise 101, and so that actually makes a big difference and a huge difference in terms of how the construct of humans and the operating system, as you said, works. And you're right. I mean, there's the auto, process, which is routine. It's a road hypnosis that you explained. It's just guaranteed. You're gonna go and that's it. Sometimes you forget. This happened to me. I was going to one destination, and I wound up going like an hour later. I was on the phone. And I wound up like in a different place, and I'm like,
And the same thing.
literally, I'm like, what the hell? But because I'm used to going that way, I didn't even pay attention until I realized it was too late, and I had to do a whole big, turn and detour to come back. But it's just like you're just literally frozen. But you're right. But we do have a lot more in control possibilities. But it's the matter of really reaching into it and really using that capability. And you're right. Sometimes if you set the wrong expectations, or at least your expectations are not managed properly, you will wind up in a dead end, and maybe like, this is it. I can't do this, because you do need to set up, yourself, that this is, I'm going to do here. And you have to know yourself too. That's the other part. I think, if people sometimes don't realize, like, well, you said it, I want to be like The Rock. Well, The Rock's body, metabolism, everything, his whole life has been working out. You're not going to be the same as him. You could, but you need to pick up a few years, to catch on to him.
You need to have 16 hours a day to dedicate to diet and exercise too.
Well, exactly. So you have to make some. I love what you said about doing the same thing, over and over, and expect a different outcome. Insanity, as by definition, right? So it's those are real facts, and it's the sad thing. I think we all know these things somehow, but we still fall. We fail at them, because I think people are now watching, listening, like, well, I know that. What are you telling me different? We're just saying that you're saying that the research shows that a lot of people get to that, and they eventually do the swipe business, and they just kind of reset or stop whatever they're working.
Well, the thing that we're trying to point out here is that a lot of the damage from swiping, apart from missed opportunities, comes because people blame themselves for doing it. There's a lot of self-recrimination. There's a lot of blame. I suck. I'm worthless. I'll never be a writer. You know how many times I've heard someone say, I'll never be a writer? I don't have what it takes to be. Maybe I'm not a real writer. A lot. And what we're doing is we're blaming ourselves for being human. We're blaming ourselves for getting into something the first time out of enthusiasm. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with trying something for the first time. I want to write a book. Okay, I sit down, open my computer, and just write with no plan, just out of sheer kind of balls to the wall enthusiasm, and then having it be not so good. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with trying it the first time and having it be a flop, because that kind of exuberance should be rewarded, or at least it should be celebrated. Give it a shot. Now, I wouldn't say do a marathon of that way, because you're going to hurt yourself. But if it's composing music or something like that, why not? The trick is, though, if you fail, don't internalize it. You fail because of how your brain works, because we are naturally disposed to run away from discomfort. We are naturally disposed to run away from danger and seek comfort and seek predictability, right? And we are naturally disposed to have expectations. If you don't have information, if you didn't talk to somebody and say, okay, you're a personal trainer, how long do you think it's going to take for me to get results, and what do you think I can expect in 3 months, 6 months? Okay, if you don't do that, well, of course you're going to have faulty expectations. What we do is we fail because we swipe, because we're frustrated, because we're emotional, and we blame ourselves for it. And so what we do, we go back and try the same thing again and again and again, and we don't change anything. And we do that in some ways as a punishment. You're going to do it the same way this time, and you're going to get it right this time. It's almost like eat your vegetables, young man. Where we go back and so if I want to want to write my screenplay, I'm going to go back and do the exact same thing when I failed the first time. Okay, maybe once I can see that. But if you, by the time you come to attempt maybe number 5, you need to change some things, change some of the conditions of the experiment, change when you're writing, where you're writing, change the music that's playing, change your subject matter, go to a seminar, read a book on screenwriting, change some of the fundamentals of the experiment. Rather than, I think people honestly do that. They go back and do it the exact same way because they are punishing themselves for having failed, for having swiped. This is a punishment. It's almost like, it's Sisyphus rolling the rock up the hill in hell. You're going to keep doing it until you get it right. Well, he never gets to the top. He just keeps rolling the rock and it rolls back down, and he tries to push it up again for eternity. And I think that's what we do, is we blame ourselves instead of saying, this is a normal thing. One of the key reasons we wrote the book was to illustrate that this is a phenomenon that can be explained, it can be predicted, and it can be addressed, and it can be fixed.
You can. Oh, well, Tim, I mean, you're really putting a lot of good stuff there, and there are 2 elements that you stated that are powerful words that, if you think about them in a different way, you probably can change the whole outcome of what we're talking about here, and the swipe becomes, something that you can control easily, right? One is, you talked about how people do it, and when they feel that they failed at it, that's it, right? They just keep doing it the same way. Now, here's the thing. I choose not to use the word fail. Typically what I use is that it's another way to learn something, about a different way to learn about something. And if you use that instead of the fail concept, right, what it means is that now this didn't work. Guess what? I got to do something different. To your point, if you do it exactly the same way, what the expectation is going to be here? It's the same thing, the same outcome. But the idea is, it's not a failure if you learn it, you learn from it, and you tweak it and change it. Like, what can I do to make it different? That could be second attempt, third attempt, and you keep changing things, shifting things. You also talked about how someone usually gets to the point and they start beating on themselves and giving all this negative thought, and I'm not good at it, I can't do this, whatever. And then, to your point, sometimes they're just like, oh, I can't take the beating, I'm gonna keep doing. So it's that self-thought, discussion that is not going anywhere. It's like, to your point, it's just like, spinning wheels. But if you start thinking positive, again, switching the concept, like, all right, well, roadblock, I can't figure this out. Well, maybe, what am I doing wrong? See, I use that technique personally. Like, I get to a point like, wait a minute, how do I solve for this? There's something I'm missing. Where did I? And then I step backwards. Literally, I look at what did I do, or didn't. And then, or if not, I'm going to learn from somebody else, what they're doing different. And maybe I'll pick something from them that I can adapt to my whatever I'm doing, and it changes the dynamics. And so it is a concept that can be done. As I love what you said, the book is really to tell people that it can be fixed. This is not the end of the line. We all have the ability to maneuver through this and do what we have to, what we love, and still achieve things. So I mean, so now the book is available, I'm assuming, right? Already.
On Amazon, and it's available in the usual places.
Usual places. Okay. I love it. Now, I will have the swipethebook.com, website, on the description of the show, so people can reach out. Now, just as I know we're just about the end of time. I know we've talked about, our time restricts here, let's just, maybe share with the audiences, 2 or 3 top, I guess, nice messages that you can leave them with, based on your research.
You from the book, you mean?
From the book, yeah, because I mean, you did a lot of the work, to get to the book. So I'm from the book, or outside the book, actually.
Oh, fine. I think one of the really important distinctions to make is that there is something that's sort of adjacent to swiping, but is not a swipe, what we call tapping out. Tapping out is when you deliberately leave a situation or in the process for reasons, for good reasons, valid reasons, because it's harmful to you, such as leaving an abusive relationship or something like that. The gymnast Simone Biles, who was actually in the news today because she says she's returning to the competition, she's a good example of a tap out. So a tap out is not a swipe. A swipe is reflexive. A tap out is I am making the conscious decision to walk away from this. She, in the 2020 Olympic Games, she quit in the middle of the team gold gymnastics competition because she said she had what they call the twisties, which is where she had lost her ability to perceive where her body was in space. And she was worried about her mental health and her physical health. And she walked away. And that was an affirmative action in her benefit. And people actually, people applauded her for it. That's a tap out. So tapping out is not the same as swiping. So if you're in a bad situation, tapping out is a completely appropriate thing. That's one thing I can leave people with. We've had that question since we wrote the book about, well, should I stay in an abusive job? No, it's not the same thing. A second thing would be another key way for people to really move forward with these pursuits where they have fallen short and swiped multiple times is to also, apart from looking at their expectations, look at your motivation. Why are you attempting to do this? Why is it important to you? Is it something that, I know, I keep going back to writing because it's what I know, but I have talked to 100 wannabe writers trying to get that first novel out who didn't even like writing fiction. They just thought that, well, writing novels is what writers do, right? No, there are 40 other ways to be a professional writer. You don't have to write a 120,000 word novel. So their motivation was not here. It wasn't even here. It was sort of, I want to impress this kind of nebulous audience of not even sure who. So if you don't want it for the right reasons, you're not going to do it. I think that's true of almost anything. And I work with people all the time who got where they were after a bunch of falling short because the stakes were higher, because their back was against the wall, because something happened where they got into a business where they said, I want this more than anything else right now. That's what I want. So looking at motivation is absolutely key. Apart from looking at expectations, if you can nail your expectations being correct and your motivations being pure and true to what you want to hear, then good odds are good that you're not going to swipe. And the third thing is be nice to ourselves. Be kind to ourselves. We are so, we all do this. That's one of the reasons we wrote the book is because failing to finish what you start, failing to engage with your children, with your spouse, those are universal. We all do them. We all don't engage the way we should from time to time in something important. And when we do that, it's important to be kind to yourself, to accept that, okay, you fell short this time. It happens, you're human. This is maybe why, or maybe you don't understand why. Take some, it may take some investigation of your motives and motivations and things like that. But we beat ourselves up a lot for failures that are due to things that are not necessarily in our control. So rather than that kind of spitting that kind of venom at yourself, be kind, be understanding. Say, okay, I'll do better next time. Can't go back. All you can do is learn from what you did. I'll do better next time. I'm going to do this much better next time. I'll get this much farther next time. And I think that might be the most important lesson of all, just self-compassion.
And there's a lot in there, man. I appreciate all that. I mean, that's super wisdom that is probably, a motivation for someone today watching or listening to really, there's got to be someone that's probably at that crossroads and we're like, maybe I'm about to swipe or to tap out. and this could be the nugget that's going to change that moment and hopefully get them a restart or refresh and re-engage in whatever path they are. So thank you so much, Tim, for today. I mean, time flew as they say. It was just like a quick hour, but a lot of stuff in this hour. And first of all, thank you. And although Tracy is not with you today, but thank you, Tracy, for bringing the knowledge and the psychology into the book and sharing this piece, together with the world. It's definitely something to take to heart. I will definitely promote as much as I can, because I do believe in the message in the book and what it can do to people. And um, that's it. Tim, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been true, again, honor and privilege with you having, this discussion.
The honor is mine. I really appreciate it. It's an absolute pleasure to join you.
Thank you, sir. And folks, there you have it. I hope that this hour has been positive, and really full of good stuff that's going to make a difference in your life or the lives of someone you know. Share the wealth, share the love, share the information, share the knowledge. I'm Hurricane H. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show on the topic. Bye for now.